Good evening, folks. We're going to do two chapters tonight because the first one is just going to be a straight read through. It's just the lineage of Esau, and it's a bunch of names that I'm going to mispronounce. Not really much in the way of deep down context here, but the next chapter is definitely one. So, hey, Brian, welcome aboard. We're going to spend a little bit of time and we're going to talk about some of the symbols that Moses sets up in Genesis. So we'll spend a little bit of time in 37, but I'm just going to do a straight read through tonight of Genesis 36, and then we'll go from there. I'm also going to be doing something a little bit different today. I'm going to have the live up. Oops, not doing that. Main computer to see if I can handle comments a little bit better so I don't miss them as much. So we'll see how that works out. So you might hear a little bit more clicking, Stephen, than you normally do. So all right, Genesis 36 and 37. I'll be reading out of the King James Version. I've got the ESV up for a little bit better or more modern English, I guess. I'm still testing out the ESV for inconsistencies and problems. So far I've been very pleased with it. It seems to get Genesis pretty good. I will say that if the ESV tests out really well and it has about the same or even less problems than the King James, then I might switch over to it as the primary reader for me. So but that's going to be a long test. That's not going to be something I'm going to do here in the next couple of months. And I do know that there are a couple of problems that I have with it, but there are some things in it that I have really liked. So we'll see how it works out. We'll definitely be using it one time tonight that I know of. So I do not plan on going through each of these names in Genesis 36. Hey Charlie, we're doing Genesis 36 and 37 tonight. Study. We're just going to read through 36, but then we're going to talk about some of the things that go on in 37. So, but I'm not going to stop at each of these names and tell you what they mean, because we'll be here till midnight if I did that. So you just have to suffer through me butchering those names, and then we'll get on to 37. So, all right. So Genesis 36, verse 1. Now these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. And the reason Moses makes that point is, remember, this is all being written during the 40 years of wandering, pretty close towards the end of that wandering is my understanding. And hey Stephen. And so he is reminding the Israelites where they came from, how they got their start, and the history of the nations around them. And that concept of the nations around them, I do not have COVID. Just letting you know, the coughing is, I've had a really dry throat today because I spent a lot of time outside, and I just woke up from an afternoon nap. Wore myself out staying up too late last night, so I can. I'm perfectly fine. I'm not sick. But anyway, just the idea here is Moses is given. Hey, Mom. Moses is given the origin of all of these surrounding nations, and the idea of the surrounding nations is one that is very, very prevalent throughout the Old Testament. It's very important to understand from the biblical perspective what's going on with these surrounding nations and where they came from, and how God viewed them and how he viewed them in relationship to the Israelite nation. And you're going to see, like, for instance, Isaiah. One of the big premises of Isaiah is, and to understand it correctly, you have to understand Isaiah is a book that is about Judah and Jerusalem. It says that there in chapter 1, verse 1, that Isaiah had a prophecy concerning Judah and Jerusalem. So everything in that book, all 66 chapters of that book, are about Judah and Jerusalem. And what God does in that book is he uses the surrounding nations as kind of a foil to say, look, you want to be like these nations? You are going to be like these nations, and every single one of them is wicked, and I have or will destroy every single one of them. And if you keep acting the way that you're acting, I'm going to destroy you too. And that's something we see as a constant theme throughout the Old Testament, just warning after warning after warning. Hey Louise, hey Houston, welcome aboard. So that's why we keep getting these generations. That's why we keep getting these lists of people, even though they aren't directly related to the line of Abraham. So now these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. That's where the Edomites come from. Remember, they were destined to serve as a nation, the Israelite people, and eventually they would get tired of it and they would throw off that yoke before the end of all of this mess that is the Israelite nation. And Esau took his wives of the daughters of Canaan, Adah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Aholibamah, the daughter of Anna, the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite. So those are the two wives that Isaac and Rebekah had major problems with. Oh yeah, it is exceptionally good. Stephen says that this is so cool. This is real world history and its origins that really helps modern man understand who he is and where he came from. This all lends to us understanding out our place and purpose in the world. Absolutely, totally does. Agree 100%. So these are the two wives that he takes, remember, from the Canaanites, and Bashemath, Ishmael's daughter, and that's not his direct daughter, that's a descendant of Ishmael, sister of Nebajoth. And Adah bare to Esau Eliphaz, and Bashemath bare Reuel, and Aholibamah bare Jeush, and Jalem and Korah. These are the sons of Esau, which were born unto him in the land of Canaan. Now that's interesting, that word Korah, that name Korah. And we're going to see another Korah in the book of Numbers. It's a different person, same name. And he is one of the Israelites, and he leads a rebellion. But anyway, we'll get to that. Which were born unto him in the land of Canaan. And Esau took his wives and his sons and his daughters and all the persons of his house and his cattle and all his beasts and all his substance which he had got in the land of Canaan, and went into the country from the face of his brother Jacob. So the idea here is that just in all of these cases, these people are so, they're replenishing the earth. The command that God said, go and replenish the earth. They're having big families, and these big families turn into these big kind of roving, nomadic mini tribes that eventually come to be so large that they turn into city-states. They stop in a location. We're too big to move, and so they found a city, and we're going to start seeing here that these people are called princes because they rule their city, and they found a city based on this is the son of Esau that is this prince, and this is this prince, or whatever, this is the grandson, and so on. So they're becoming these city-states, which eventually form into this fairly large nation that Israel, when they come out of captivity, is going to have to face as a full-fledged nation of multiple cities rather than just another nomadic tribe. So just keep that in mind as we're reading through this. So they got really big, and they couldn't fit in the same land with Jacob. They had too many cattle, too many sheep. They were eating up all the grass, essentially. So thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Again, Esau is Edom. Moses reminds the Israelites, hey, Esau is Edom. Okay, he is the one from whom the Edomites come out of. You've got to remember that. And these are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. So he just hits that point. Esau is the beginning of the Edomites. Why is it important for Moses to remind him of that? As I have said on multiple occasions, the thing here, hey Tracy, the thing here is about the nations. It's about the nations and how they relate to one another. So Edom was supposed to serve Israel. The nations were predestined in that sense, and we see that again in Romans 9. We see it throughout the Old Testament. We're going to see it all through the books of prophecy and whatnot. This constant relationship between nations, because God moves nations. God predestines nations to work. Hey Arthur, welcome aboard. So it's important to focus on those things for us to understand, because Moses is focusing on those things. It's important to him, and he's saying, hey, Israelites, pay attention to the nations and where they came from and what they're like. So these are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, the son of Ada, the wife of Esau; Reuel, the son of Bashemoth, the wife of Esau. And the sons of Eliphaz, so these are grandchildren: Teman, Omar, Zepho, and Gatam, and Kenaz. And Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare Eliphaz Amalek. So that's the Amalekites. So where do the Amalekites come from? They are the descendants of Esau. These were the sons of Ada, Esau's wife. And these are the sons of Reuel, Nahath, and Zerah, and Shammah, and Mizah. These were the sons of Bashemoth, Esau's wife. That's the Ishmael line from Esau. And these were the sons of Aholibamah, the daughter of Anna, the daughters of Zibeon, Esau's wife. And she bare to Esau Jeush, and Jalem, and Korah. These were dukes. So that's the idea that the King James presents dukes. Of course, we're talking the early modern English here, so they're going to use the word dukes. The ESV uses the word chiefs. This is the early version of the city-state kings. So yeah, there's no disputing that. Edom is Esau. That is absolutely true. So they're going to call them dukes. These were dukes of the sons of Esau, the sons of Eliphaz. So by the time we get to the third generation after Esau, they're becoming city-states. Hey, Tom. And they're kind of settling down, and they're no longer being these nomadic tribes, but they're kind of founding these cities. So there were the dukes of the sons of Esau, the sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn son of Esau, Duke Teman, Duke Omar, Duke Zepho, and Duke Kenaz. They've already named these guys, but now they're saying, hey, they become dukes, or they become chiefs, they become leaders of these towns, these city-states, which eventually settle down and into a location. Duke Korah, Duke Gatam, and Duke Amalek. These are the dukes, or the chiefs, that came of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These were the sons of Ada. And these are the sons of Reuel, Esau's son, Duke Nahath, Duke Zerah, Duke Shammah, Duke Mizah. These are the dukes that came of Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Bashemoth, Esau's wife. Bashemoth is the Ishmaelite. And these are the sons of Aholibamah, Esau's wife, Duke Jeush, Duke Jalem, Duke Korah. These were the dukes that came of Aholibamah, the daughter of Anna, Esau's wife. These are the sons of Esau, who is Edom. Man, Moses just, hammer that home. And these are their dukes. These are their chiefs. These are the sons of Seir the Horite, who inhabited the land: Lotan, and Shobal, and Zibeon, and Anna, and Dishon, and Ezer, and Dishan. These are the dukes of the Horites, the children of Seir in the land of Edom. And the children of Lotan were Hori and Hemam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. And the children of Shobal were these: Alvan, Simon, Theodore. No, I'm sorry, that's not what it says. And the children of Shobal were these: Alvan, and Manahath, and Ebal, and Shepho, and Onam. And these are the children of Zibeon, both Ajah and Anna. This was the Anna that found the mules in the wilderness as he fed the asses of Zibeon, his father. Some random story that they all knew about that we don't hear any more about is this guy found some mules out in the wilderness. There's apparently some kind of story that we hear about that the Israelites would have known about that we don't know about. Moses decided to say, hey, remember this story? This is that guy. And then we aren't told anything more about it. And the children of Anna were these: Dishon and Aholibamah, the daughter of Anna. And these are the children of Dishon: Hamdan, and Ishban, and Ithran, and Charan. Now note, some of these names sound kind of similar. Anna and Aholibamah. Remember, these are descendants of Esau. But they're, kind of like how we honor a grandparent or an uncle or something like that, and we name our kid after them. I'm a junior, and I actually am the third Ernie in line because of this whole thing, except my grandfather had a different middle name. But that's kind of what's going on here. You're seeing some of the same names, and Dave, they are similar names because they're honoring their grandparents and stuff. So they're not the same person, but you gotta keep them straight. One of the things I like to do when I'm not doing it online, it's a little bit harder to show this, but one of the things that I like to do is do a little hierarchy chart. Here's Esau, and then here's his three wives, and who sprang from who. I love seeing those charts because then you kind of get a picture of who came from where and stuff like that. So if you have time, make that yourself. I'm not saying go find one online. Make it yourself. Hey, Trent. Because if you do the work and you connect the dots yourself, you'll have a much better understanding of who came from where and how all of these lineages worked out. So, and it's a fun little thing you can do with your kids is you get these lineages down and you can show your kids. We got lots of time right now, right? You can show your kids all these lineages of all these people as a project. It's a great project. It'll help in terms of just general education. It'll help in their biblical education and stuff. So you're almost George 4. Cool. Instead of your Stephen George. So a little bit of honoring. Love my dad. I am honored to be named after him. But when I was going to have a son, everybody assumed I was going to name him Ernie. And after all the whole Sesame Street thing, that just wasn't going to happen. So I ended up naming my son after 2 characters from my novels instead. So he's kind of named after me because the main characters in my novels is also me. But anyway, I like having my dad's name. Totally cool with that. But I was not going to saddle my son with that name because of the whole Sesame Street thing. So sorry, Dad. Anyway, let's see here. Duke Anna, Duke Dishon, Duke Ezer, Duke Dishon, and remember Duke Anna here is a dude's name. He's a duke. He's a chief. Whereas up above you have Anna is a female name. I guess it's one of those names, kind of like Tracy, that can go either way. Hey, Paul, welcome aboard. We're in Genesis 36. And verse 30, for those of you who are just joining us, we're reading through 36 without much comment, and then we're going to head into 37 with a lot of comment. Duke Dishon, Duke Ezer, Duke Dishan, so Dishan, I'm guessing those guys are kind of like twins or whatever. These are the dukes or the chiefs that came of Hori among their dukes in the land of Seir. And these are the kings. See, now we have Basilius in the Greek. These are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. So we're seeing this transition here into a full-fledged the city-states now. They're kings over their cities now, not just chiefs of these roving tribes. But then you have these kings, and then they're going to form into, by the time they come out of Egypt. Hey, Rosalind. By the time they come out of Egypt, these will have formed into the mighty nation of the Edomites and the Amalekites as well. So, all right, verse 32, and Bela, the son of Beor, reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhabah. So there we have a city. And Bela died, and Jobab, which is really fun to say. It's one of my favorite names in the Bible, just to say Jobab. Anyway, and Bela died, and Jobab, the son of Zerah of Bozrah, reigned in his stead, and Jobab died. Oh, poor Jobab. And Husham of the land of Tamani reigned in his stead. And Husham died, and Hadad, the son of Bedad, who smote Midian in the field of Moab. Now, Midian, at this point, is, I believe, a person. But I could be, Midian, I believe, is a person. At this point, not the nation of Midian from where we get Jethro or whatever. So, thank you, Stephen. Midian is slain in the field of Moab, and so Hadad, who smote Midian in the field of Moab, reigned in his stead, and the name of his city was Avith. So there we have the second city, the founded city, no more a roving tribe. And Hadad died, and Samlah of Masrekah reigned in his stead, and Samlah died, and Saul of Rehoboth by the river reigned in his stead. And Saul died, and Baal-Hanan, the son of Akbor, reigned in his stead. Now, that word Akbor is really cool, or that name Akbor is pretty cool, because I actually stole that name, and it's a character in my novels. So a little bit of fun there, just for reference. And let me pull that up, because so the character goes by the name Muskrat. They call him Muskrat all through the whole thing. He's a bit of a street thief, elf kind of guy. Yes, Karis? You lost? Okay, so hit respawn. Let me see real quick. All right, she died. Oh, you're back.
I know.
Oh, you're lost. You don't know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was following those little oak trees, but they aren't.
All right. Well, you're just gonna have to wander around because I'm doing this. Okay. Sorry.
Can you do a command?
Okay, folks. Hold on. The things I do. There. Alright. She's making me a bed in Minecraft. Thank you, dear. Alright, yeah, so anyway, his name is Muskrat, and so the word Akbor in the original language is mouse, so it fit. And that's where I got that. I thought it was Meher Shalal. What? Meher Shalal Hashbaz? Where did you get that from? Alright. So anyway, Brian says in verse 36, the smoke Midian. So let me see what the ESV, it might be the nation at this point. Husham died and defeated Midian in the country of, so the Midianites are of Lot. And we're enough generations removed that maybe by this time, Brian, you're right, that they probably are because I was just looking at the King James here. So by this time, they probably are big enough to be considered at least a roving band of people, and so defeated them in the field of Moab. They didn't wipe them out, obviously, but smote them. So you're probably correct there, Brian. Thank you for that. All right. Anyway, verse 39, and Baal-Hanan, the son of Akbor, died, and Hadar reigned in his stead, and the name of his city was Pau. So that's the third city that we've had named. And his wife's name was Mehetabel, the daughter of Matred, the daughter of Mezahab. And these are the names of the chiefs that came of Esau according to their families after their place by their names: Duke Timnah, Duke Alva, Duke Jeheth, Duke Aholibama, Duke Elah, Duke Pinon, Duke Kenaz, Duke Teman, Duke Mibzar, Duke Magdiel, Duke Iram. These be the dukes of Edom, according to their habitations in the land of their possession. He is Esau, the father of the Edomites. So we'll just got to get that plug in one more time. So anyway, this is kind of where the Edomites came from. Remember, at this point in time, they're coming up out of Egypt, and they're going to encounter the Edomites, and they're going to see them, and these cities are cities that were founded by the Edomites. And so Moses is giving the history of where these cities came from that they encountered. And then, of course, he's got to get that plug one last time. The Esau is the father of the Edomites. Hey, these people are related to you, basically. Cool. Thank you, Stephen. Hey, Judy, welcome aboard. We are just starting Genesis 37. We just finished reading through 36. Didn't spend too much time in it, but we're gonna stop in places here in 37, and we're gonna talk about a few things. So this is the story of Joseph being sold into slavery. So one of the things that's important to understand, if you're keeping the timeline in mind, hey Amber, when Jacob was in the Padanaram trying to marry Rachel, essentially, he spent 7 years there working for Rachel, ended up getting married to Leah instead, married Rachel with a promise of another 7 years. And because 7 years have passed, so you only have 13 years where he works the extra 7 and then works another 6 for all of the sheep and the goats and stuff. So there's only 13 years after he marries Rachel and Leah that he has kids. So the oldest, Reuben, can be no more than 13 when he leaves, and probably no more than 12 at this point, if I do my calculations here. So Reuben, the oldest, is 12 when they come out of the land of Padan Aram back into the land of Canaan, because that's the time that's passed. So when Rachel finally has Joseph, Joseph can be no more than an infant, really, by the time they're leaving Padan Aram. And so understand that Joseph is very much younger than the rest of his brothers. His brothers by this time are old enough to have married and probably started having kids of their own. But Joseph is not. At best, he's a teenager growing up during this time period that we've gone through. So he's 17 now when we read about him in this chapter. But he's all through this time, he's not an old, he's not a man. He's still a teenager, a young kid. So just keep that in mind. Just keep the timeline kind of in mind. What's going on here? I think it's. But I also think it's fairly interesting. Let me turn off my sound here. Just to keep those things straight, just to keep the timeline straight in your head, or if you have to, draw it out. There's a lot of those available online, but again, making it yourself, you probably will retain it a lot better. And that's just me speaking as a teacher. Writing engages more of your brain and more of your mind than just hearing it. So, all right, chapter 37, starting in verse 1. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. So he was a sojourner, is what the ESV says. The sojourning is a common thread here. Abraham was said that he and his descendants would sojourn for 400 something years. We read in Galatians that it was 430 years that they sojourned in this land of Canaan. That means they were strangers before the land was actually, that came into their possession and they owned it as a nation. So these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. And I find it interesting that they're called wives here in the... Let's see here, where is it? Yeah, the word here that's used here is wives, both in the King James and the ESV. And so I wonder, after Rachel passed away, if Jacob went ahead and like formalized his relationship with Zilpah and Bilhah and married them, because wives is a different word than concubine. Because remember, these were the handmaidens of his wives Leah and Rachel. Well, Rachel passes away, and so he's calling them wives here. It seems to me that he went ahead and kind of formalized the relationship and just went ahead and married them. But anyway, so Joseph's out feeding the flocks with his brethren, and Joseph brought unto his father, it says in the King James, their evil report, but it's basically he brought back news about his brothers that was evil. They were doing something wrong, and he told on them. And so Joseph is kind of the the favorite. He may or may not be aware of this, probably not aware of this. He seems to be a pretty good guy, but he's a bit of a goody two-shoes. And so he goes back and he tells, thank you, Brian. He goes back and he tells on his brothers. And so it says here in verse 3, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. So this idea here is that this goes back to the idea that when Jacob went into the land of Padan Aram, he was 60. And when he comes out, he's 80. So he's getting to be an old man, and so Joseph was a son of his old age. Jacob considers himself, Israel considers himself an old man when Jacob is born. And then right after that, of course, we remember while they're sojourning in all this land, after the whole Esau incident or whatever, Rachel has Benjamin and then she dies. So it's interesting that Joseph is considered the favorite son and not Benjamin, but that's just the way that it works. So Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Coat of colors must have been really nice. Yeah, like a nice jacket or something. We always see it in the animations and in the Bible class stuff. It's like a robe or whatever. Back then they would wear like overcoats and stuff for when they were out and to keep the sun off. So it could have been an ankle length or a full length robe or an overcoat of some kind, but one of many colors. I want to talk a little bit about this idea of favoritism. Israel is not a perfect guy. We've already explored that. He loves Joseph more than his his children, and he doesn't seem to hide it at all. Bible doesn't say that it's wrong that he has a favorite, but it does show us the results of that. It shows that when Israel has showed his favoritism, has kind of coddled Joseph a little bit, that it does make the other brothers jealous. And for my part, I've got 3 children. I don't, whether I have a favorite or not, I don't speak it out loud. I would never do so, because I would never want to foster the kind of jealousy that we read about right here. I love each of my children, and I love each of them for different things that they are and different things that they do. But to say that I love one more than the other, even if I did, that's not something I would ever show. I wouldn't show a favoritism. And my parents are very careful about that. There's 4 of us, and we joke about it. Rustin being the baby, we talk about him being the favorite a lot. But Mom and Dad have never shown favoritism to any of us. They have always said that they loved each of us equally, and I appreciated that. And I would never challenge the idea whether they really did have a favorite, because I see here just the outcome of that. We see that with Jesus and his apostles. They vied for favoritism. They wanted a spot. When you come into your kingdom, who's going to sit on your left, who's going to sit on your right, that kind of thing. And it was it was something that Jesus said is just not important. He did love John. It said that John was the disciple that he loved. John was easily the youngest of the apostles, so that might have been a part of it. But God himself, just as the ultimate example, God does not show partiality. God does not have favorite children. He has his eldest son. That we look at Jesus as the elder brother in our being adopted into the family. Jesus is the only begotten son, but we are adopted children of God through our immersion into him. But God doesn't play favorites. He doesn't have partiality towards anybody, whether they are sinner or saint. There is no partiality with God, and he is perfect in that, whereas we probably would struggle to not have some kind of bias or partiality. Karis is my youngest. She's probably a little bit spoiled because she's just youngest. God in his perfection does not show that, and he I don't want to say he cannot show that. He obviously, being omnipotent, has the ability to do that. But what would it do for God to say, I love this child of mine more than that child of mine, or I love this sinner more than that sinner? And this is one of the major reasons. God is definitely the source of the justice or the fairness of God. Absolutely, Stephen. But this is one of the reasons I reject the idea of predestination of individuals, that I reject any form of Calvinism, whether it's the full Calvinism or the partial Calvinism that we see, like in the Baptist church or whatever. God does not predestine individuals, because that is by definition showing partiality. And God it is explicitly stated in multiple places that God does not show partiality. He does not have prejudice. He does not have bias towards individuals. He wants everybody to be saved. And so just these are the things that I thought of when going through this idea, and where we see Israel showing partiality to Joseph. It's not something that turns out well for everybody in the short term. Of course, God uses it, as He uses anything, for the greater glory and the greater plan that He has. So there's definitely that part of it. But just from the personal perspective here, the relationship of Israel to his sons, it's not a favorable one, and Joseph does suffer for it for a time. So anyway, I'll leave it at that, and then move on to some of these later verses. So yeah. All right, so when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, that's evident in the coat of many colors, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. So that word hate there, that's a big word. I talk about this with my own children. I talk about this with my students. The word hate is a really powerful word. When you apply it to individuals, what you are actually saying, the meaning of the word hate, is that you dislike somebody so much that you would be happy if they were dead, and that you would probably be willing to do it yourself. So to say you hate someone is a very powerful, very dark emotion. Dislike strongly, not happy with you now, don't want to be around you, but to say the word that you actually hate somebody, I would caution you using that word. And that's what we see here. His brothers hate him. Esau hated Jacob at the time because of losing his birthright and his blessing. And we're going to see how that plays out, that they want to kill him. And they certainly couldn't speak peaceably unto him. Joseph dreams a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him even more for it. He said unto them, and of course, remember, Joseph's kind of naive here. He's a goody two-shoes, and he's a bit naive. He doesn't seem to realize the effect that he is having, just as his father's partiality and wearing the coat out with them, and all of the things that he talks to them about, doesn't seem to register with him what he's doing. Yeah, I agree, Brian. Don't let people claim that kind of power over you, that they would draw hatred from you. That's a lot of energy that you consume in hating. Why would I don't hate anybody. There's not a person alive or dead, for that matter, that I hate, that I would want to see dead. Even the worst of the people in the world, I would rather them repent and follow after Jehovah God than to see them dead. That doesn't mean I'm against killing as if it's necessary, but I don't hate. It's just not in me to hate people. Like you said, I would rather spend my energy on something else. You're exactly right. All right, so anyway, Joseph says, and he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we are binding sheaves in the field. And lo, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about and made obeisance to my sheaf. So you can imagine how that goes over. Here he is claiming that, I had this dream and my sheaf was standing up and the rest of you guys were bowing down as if I had authority over you. And so his brothers say to him, Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And so, of course, they don't know. Joseph doesn't know what's going to happen. The brothers don't know what's going to happen. And they don't know, Joseph doesn't know that the source of these dreams is God. He's just having some dreams, and he's like, hey guys, guess what I dreamed? And so they they get mad at him even more. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. So that's including Benjamin. Benjamin, of course, is born by this time. He's probably a little bitty boy. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to you, to the earth? All right, a few things to say about this. And this is one of the places I'm probably going to pause for a little while. Yeah, totally poured salt into the wound there. Number one, at this point, and this is why I kind of hesitate to say that Zilpah and Bilhah were anything more than concubines. I know it uses the word wives, but remember, Rachel is Joseph's mother, his birth mother. She's dead. So what is the language here? Because when I heard these, hey Scott, welcome aboard. We're in Genesis 37. We're talking about Joseph's dreams here. When I was presented this in Bible class, we always present these things many times out of context, rightfully so in a sense, because when we're little bitty, we're not ready to hear about some of the things that are going on. But it clicked in my mind that Rachel is Joseph's mother, and Jacob says here, shall I and thy mother? Well, I've always pictured Rachel in my head at this point, but Rachel's dead. Jacob is talking about Leah here. Leah is still alive. And so when he says, shall I and thy mother, he's talking entirely about Leah at this point. So, and Stephen's leading into my next point here. Moses, again, remember, everything that Moses writes is establishing the Israelite nation. And one of the big things that Moses establishes is all of the anchors for the prophecies that come later. When you read in Isaiah, and you read in Joel, and you read all of these guys that talk about the sun, and the sun is going to be darkened, and the moon will turn to blood, and the stars are going to fall from heaven. All of these things are drawing on Moses, who is establishing here, first of all, the reality. There is a sun, there is a moon, there is a star. Sorry, flat earthers, you're wrong. But there is also an explicit tie-in that Moses makes here relating Joseph's dream, in that he says, I dreamed about the sun, the moon, and the stars. And Jacob understands it. Jacob understands what Joseph... Yeah, I call it apocalyptic language, Stephen. That's what we refer to it as the apocalyptic language, or the dream language, or the language of revelation. Not the book Revelation, although that's part of it. But when God reveals his working among the nations to the prophets, he does it through these dreams, through these symbols. And so what Jacob understands immediately is, Joseph, you had a dream. What are you saying? That I, who's the number one authority figure in his life, his mother, who's the number two authority figure in his life, because he's still a boy. He's not an adult man yet. He won't be till he's 20. And his 11 brothers. And so what we have here is we have Israel, we have the second authority figure, and then we have the patriarchs of the 12 tribes, all involved with this dream. And so Moses founds the idea that the son is the number one authority figure in a given context, usually and almost always the king of Israel. The moon is some kind of lesser authority. Typically we see this as the high priest when we're talking about Israel. And then the stars are lesser authorities underneath that number one authority, the king. And so when we read about these things later on, if we understand those things in that context, then it makes sense when the Bible starts talking about the sun being darkened and the moon turning to blood and the stars falling from heaven. We aren't literally talking about the sun being eclipsed or suddenly winking out of existence or anything, or the moon turning literally to blood, or stars falling from heaven. Stars are big balls of gas burning billions of miles away. Thank you, Pumbaa. A real star falling from heaven, a single one of those would consume the planet. So this isn't, and talking about asteroids or any of those other things, there's no context for that. There's no reason to understand it that way, particularly since we have eclipses and stars, asteroids falling all the time, meteorites falling all the time. So to understand these things in context is to go back to Moses and understand them the way that the Israelites would understand them. And so when you read in Joel 2, when you read in Acts 2, when Peter says, hey, this is what Joel was talking about when he says that the sun would be darkened and there would be vapors of smoke and pillars of fire and all of that comes from the foundation that Moses is laying here, talking about where the Israelites came from and where the Israelites would be going. And one of those big foundations is Joseph's dream here. So anyway, and it's not hard to understand either. This isn't complex or complicated, and you have to be a scholar with multiple degrees in Hebrew to understand this. Jacob's this farmer dude. His son has a dream, and he immediately understands it. So it's not complicated at all. And so anybody can understand this, but you have to make sure that you're understanding it from the way that the Bible presents it, and not because anybody told you. Not even me. I'm not inspired. I don't have any kind of supernatural ability here. I'm just telling you what I think the Bible says based on reading through it. I'm not an authority. So go to the Bible, understand what the Bible says in context, and try to understand it the way that Moses presents it to these former slaves who spent 40 years wandering out in this wilderness, and they're being established as a nation. They're about to cross over Jordan. And so oh yeah, we absolutely do not talk like that here in America. And there are far too many that are ignorant of the Old Testament, and it's very, very sad. This is why you end up with the Torah observant people, and Stephen, the people that you're dealing with. I forgot the Sicarii, I think is what they're called. The Judaizers that Paul had to deal with in his day. Even the Israelites didn't understand what they were reading. They did not understand the superiority of the new covenant over the old, and how Gentiles were never under that covenant and never supposed to be under that covenant. We're under the law of Christ today. And so the lack of understanding of the Old Testament really leads to a pretty bad understanding of the New Testament. And a lot of people end up having a very shallow, very weak faith because of it. Romans 15:4, what did Paul say? The things that were written aforetime were written for our learning. You want to really understand the New Testament, you need to go back and understand the Old Testament. That's its value to us today, is it gives us the foundation for understanding so much of what was going on in the first century, because everything in the Old Testament points to the first century, to the coming of Christ and coming of the church. So, all right. So there's the dream. Verse 11, and his brothers envied him, but his father observed the saying. He doesn't get jealous. He doesn't have, hey Tim, he doesn't get upset about it. He did kind of rebuke him a little bit, but while his brothers are getting mad, Jacob is kind of thoughtful about it. And that's kind of all we hear about his observations of that particular dream. All right, then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. Remember, these flocks are getting pretty big, so they're going all over the place so that their sheep don't eat up all of the grass in one location. And Israel said to Joseph, that's the man Israel, said unto Joseph, do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said to him, here am I. And as Brian said, this is I'm ready. I'm willing to go. And it's a phrase we kind of see throughout the Old Testament, all the way through, like Samuel, here am I, Lord, send me, that kind of thing. So, and he said unto him, go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So Jacob knows that Joseph is going to be honest. The 17-year-old boy is again, I'm perceiving him as very naive, but he's truthful, and his father knows it, and so his father's kind of using him that way, that he's going to get a good report, or a truthful report about what his brothers are doing. Remember earlier on that he brought back a bad report about his brothers. Brothers are doing something they weren't supposed to be doing. So, plus on top of that, his brothers have done some things that they should not have done. Some pretty bad things. Remember, the Reuben had slept with, I believe it was Bilhah, and then you had Simeon and Levi had gone in and they had massacred an entire city-state worth of men for sleeping with Dinah, for that one dude sleeping with Dinah. And so these guys have got some severe character flaws, and Jacob I think really knows it, and so he's sending Joseph in to kind of spy on them and say, bring back what are they doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it says, a certain man found him, and behold, let's see here. Yeah, and bring me word again. So he sent him into the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem, and a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, saying, what seekest thou? And he said, I seek my brethren, tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, they are departed from here, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. So they're not where his father expected them to be. And I think that's significant. Don't know that that's bad, but that's significant. Might play a little bit more into the details kind of going on behind the scenes here. When they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. Now I want to ask you a question here, because I always got this wrong. When I heard this in Bible class, I always got this wrong. What did the brothers initially want to do to Joseph? Remember, they hate him. And who was it that initially said, no, let's not kill him? Right? Because that's what the brothers said they wanted to do. They wanted to kill him. And who was it that said, no, let's don't kill him? Because, see, I was always told it was Judah. And that's not actually what happens. And so for me, reading this again, not this time, but in times past as an adult, reading through this and reading this in a fuller, broader context, going back through this with an adult mind where I'm studying it on my own, it was a bit of a shock to me. Also, the way that it happens is not exactly the way that I was taught in Bible class when I was a little kid. And so there's some details here that are a little bit different than maybe what you have learned, and definitely what I learned when I was in Bible class. So when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, let us slay him and cast him into some pit. And we will say some evil beast has devoured him. And we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it. So Reuben is there and he hears it, but he's not up for this. And he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. Now Reuben is the oldest brother here, so maybe he's got a little bit of maturity on him. He's mad enough that he gives him an alternate plan, but we're going to see here that Reuben had an ulterior motive. Reuben actually comes out as the good guy here. And I did not understand that when I was a kid. I always thought it was Judah. But Reuben here has another plan that he's going to do. He says, let's not kill him. Reuben says to them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands and deliver him to his father. And so Reuben's plan is, hey, you know what? Let's not kill him. Let's just throw him into this pit. And then he kind of in his mind was like, and then after he's in this pit and everybody goes away, I'll go rescue him out of the pit and take him back to dad. And so Reuben comes out of this looking like a hero, where I always had thought it was Judah. Judah will come in later, and he'll have his part, kind of mitigating what the brothers do. But Reuben had wanted no part in what was going on at all, and was trying to save Joseph's life. And it came to pass when Joseph was coming to his brethren that they stripped him of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, and there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. So they sit down and they're going to eat. And I am, at this point, the way this context reads, I am thinking Reuben is not there because of what is said and what is done. I don't think he's part of this because he's going to get surprised later on. So they sit down and they see these Ishmaelites coming. And so the Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Because so the other brothers are still talking about killing him and hiding the fact. And he's like, there's no profit in that. Let's make some money out of this instead. So whether he heard Reuben and kind of got the same idea, maybe he didn't want, he's like, maybe Reuben's right, we shouldn't kill him, but let's sell him and make some money. That's Judah's thing. He's not a hero here, but he does caution against killing Joseph. And that's about the only thing that Judah does at this point. He says, come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brothers were content with that. So Judah's like, let's not kill him. Come on, he is our brother. Let's just sell him, get some money out of it, and we'll leave him alive that way. And then whatever happens to him after that's not on our hands. Okay, so his brothers were happy with that. Then there passed by Midianite merchantmen. So Midianites versus Ishmaelites. And for a while, I thought that the brothers didn't actually. I think what it looked like to me was that they got kind of Joseph was sold out from under them. The Midianites come and they find him in the pit, and they pull him up out and they sell him to the Ishmaelites. But later on, when Joseph is confronting him, he says, "You're the ones that sold me." So I think what happens here is that to kind of keep things at a distance from themselves, maybe Judah or one of the other brothers goes out to the Midianites and says, "Hey, there's a man in that pit. You should go pull him out. We'll give you a cut. Go sell him to the Ishmaelites. We were going to sell him to the Ishmaelites, but we'd rather you do it so that he doesn't know that it's us." So there's something going on here. So the Midianites are the ones that draw him out of the pit and sell him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And the Ishmaelites bring him into Egypt. Hey, Danny, welcome aboard. Hey, that's our brother. Let's be compassionate and only sell him his property. Right. Yeah, that's Judah. So Judah, I was always presented that Judah was a hero, and he's the one that said, hey, don't kill Joseph. Let's just sell him. Not that that's much better, but Reuben is actually the hero here. Reuben is the one, and I did not get that growing up, which kind of highlights the importance of, studying with your own kids. That's not to say that the Bible class teachers are doing a bad job or whatever. They have limitations because of the age of our kids. But we as parents know what our kids can handle. And if we're studying and we're knowledgeable and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, understanding the Bible, then we have the prime responsibility for teaching our kids and making sure they understand these things. Not saying mom and dad did a bad job at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that I got from my Bible class teachers a wrong idea of this, and that what I saw in Bible classes was that Judah was the hero and it's Reuben that was the hero. And it was actually later discussions with family, later times when Dad and I were co-teaching classes, which I started, I think, when I was about 14 years old, that when we were studying through these together, Dad and I were able to come to these conclusions, and my brothers were able to come to these conclusions. I loved the way I was able to grow up and have a dad and brothers that I could just talk to and hash things out with, and argue back and forth these points. So very, very grateful for that. Yeah, Reuben totally set the bar higher than the others. All right, so anyway, they brought Joseph into Egypt. Now here's Reuben who apparently has not been a part of all of this. His only idea was, hey, put him in the pit and not kill him. And his thinking was, I'm going to rescue him, after everybody else is gone, I'm going to rescue him and bring him to dad. And so Reuben returns to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rends his clothes. He's like, oh my gosh, Joseph's not in here. What is going on? Because he was expecting, remember, to rescue him and take him back to dad. And he returned to his brethren and said, the child is not, and whither shall I go? In other words, what did you do with him? Where's Joseph? And so I don't know if Reuben has told the truth here. I don't know if they told him what they did. But as far as Reuben knows, Joseph's not in the pit when he is expecting him to find him in the pit. And so they conspire that they're going to, Jacob's going to be super sad. And so they took Joseph's coat, they killed a kid of the goats, a young goat, and they dipped the coat in the blood, and they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, thus we have found, know now whether it be thy son's coat or not. In other words, hey, we found this, is this Joseph's coat? Which, a coat like that is going to be a one-of-a-kind kind of thing. So obviously they knew it, he knows it. And so Jacob recognized it and said, it is my son's coat, an evil beast. This is the conclusion that Jacob is reaching. It is my son's coat, an evil beast has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. Okay? And the brothers just let him draw that conclusion. Is this Joseph's coat? And then Jacob draws those conclusions and is, of course, very sad about it, and the brothers just never correct him. So Jacob rents his clothes and put sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. Of course, sons and daughters, that's also grandchildren, and refused to be comforted. And he said, for I will go down into the grave. The word there is Sheol. In the Greek, that's Hades. I will go into the grave unto my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. So Jacob thinks he's going to die, still mourning for Joseph. That's how sad he is. This is his favorite child. And so it says the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and the captain of the guard. So that brings me back up to what's actually going on. There passed by Midianite merchantmen. They drew Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. So the Midianites pull him up. They sell him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. And then it says, and the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar. Is this a contradiction? Of course, the answer is no. Hey, Donnie. Word footnote. Midianites equals Medanites. I don't understand that, Brian, what you're saying. So the Midianites are said to have sold Joseph into Potiphar. But this is not a contradiction. You have the Midianites are part of this chain. The Midianites, through the Ishmaelites, sell Joseph to Potiphar. And there's not a contradiction here. That's not what a contradiction is. There's nothing wrong with 36. This is just like the same thing as Joseph saying that his brothers sold him into Egyptian slavery. Well, they did. They just did it through middlemen. They did it through the Midianites, through the Ishmaelites, and so on. So this is not any different than that. There is no contradiction here, as some would like to say. So, yes, very cruel. Again, Moses is writing this, and he's saying this about the patriarchs of these 12 tribes coming up out of. He's like, these are your forefathers. These are the men who started your various tribes, and I want you to have a real look at them, that they weren't all these amazing people. Abraham was great, Isaac was good, Israel was pretty cool, but your founding fathers, the brothers that are the 12 tribes, a lot of those guys were not good people in some of their actions. He does come back, though, and when they have had time to grow up some, he does present them, hey, they did repent. And so when you have when you have the presentation of these brothers, and you have this lesson for Israel, the idea I think that Moses is trying to get across from them is, don't be like the other nations. Don't be like your founding fathers and their wickedness. Be like Abraham. Be like Isaac. He's trying to get them to see the good and the bad. And Israel doesn't get the message. Most of the time, Israel doesn't get the message. They do exactly what they were told not to do. And so it's a pretty rough go for them. All right, so that's a fairly long one. I've been here an hour. An hour for 2 chapters is pretty good. So happy with tonight's lesson. Thank you for all the comments. If you have found this to be beneficial, please share it. And we'll see how many people we can get on here talking. I love having people get on and question and talk about these things. And I think right now a lot of people are needing some comfort from the scriptures for various reasons, and I'm not going to get into it, my own personal opinions on that, but I think studying the Bible at any time is a good time, but studying God's Word, the mind of God, as it were, delivered to us in times of trial, is a good thing. So if you find this beneficial, share it, and we'll get more people talking about the Bible, and hopefully tomorrow night we'll get into chapter 38 and maybe 39. It's a Friday night, so should have some time for that. Thank you, Stephen, and y'all have a wonderful night and have a wonderful day tomorrow.